Hello everyone, welcome to this demo on how to combine images and also start to learn how to retouch old photograph. We're going to go over some of the tools here that we're going to use for retouching, and those are the clone stamp, we have the healing brush, spot healing brush, and the patch tool. Those are some of the images that we're going to be combining, the ones that you see here. We have one of a car, we have a landscape, we have some paper image, and this image of this gentleman right here that's going to take us in a journey. I'm just going to show you how to clean up the image a little bit. So this is our final image that we're going to create. And we have, this is going to be the beginning one. This is the one of the car. You have the city background and this paper for texture. And I'm going to explain how we're going to use this. So you basically see this image right here that has a lot of imperfections when you compare it to the one that's already fixed. So I'm going to talk about different techniques and tools that you can use. When we talk about retouching images, a lot of retouchers out there have different techniques and they have their favorite tools. I'm going to talk about what I work in my workflow and what works for me, but you might find that later on you like a lot of tool that maybe I didn't emphasize as much, and that's totally fine. I am a believer that you should definitely follow using the tool that you feel the most comfortable with if it works for you. The final product is what matters, right? Doesn't matter what tool you use as long as you get a good result. Some tools will help you go faster or will help you work cleaner and with more precision. And in that case, that's what I care about, right? I care about how the final product will look. It might be a little bit slower than other tools, but sometimes I prefer to go the slower route, so that way I end up with a better result. But I will cover all the techniques that I use, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about workflow. When you're approaching an image like this one, right, that there's a lot going on, you can't just dive into it and start cleaning it up. You have to have some kind of system. It doesn't matter what it is, but it has to make sense to you. The way that I work, I usually start at the outer edge, and I will go clockwise, so that way I know exactly where I started, and then I go around, and then I meet to that beginning part again. So for example, I usually pick an area that is like iconic, like here, between the edge of the plane and the sky. I will start zooming in there and working there, and then work my way down and across here and above. And then I go here. And then once I do that, I start going like a spiral to the middle of the picture. It's not that it's the best way. It's just the way that I've been working forever. I go from the outer part towards the inside. Usually because in most cases, when you're retouching people or a photograph, most of the time, not always, but most of the time, the main emphasis is somewhere in the middle, or the rule of third, or somewhere around there, right? So that means that I have to go a little bit slower when I get to that area. So what I do is I go around, because that's a little bit less important. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to dedicate time. That when I go to the middle, it's like I know, okay, this is a serious part. I need to really be careful here. So that's just one strategy. So the first thing I'm going to do when I open this image is you're going to duplicate the background layer. So I'm going to press Command J to duplicate that. And right away, I'm going to rename that layer. I'm going to double click there and write retouch, short for retouching. You can name it whatever you want. It has to be something descriptive that you know what it is. So that way you're going to end up with a bunch of layers. So you want to make sure you know what that one is. So once you rename that, we're going to go ahead and zoom in, because when we're working, retouching images or retouching a portrait, you want to be zooming in. You don't want to be far away, because you're not going to have control and you're not going to see what's really happening. So you want to be able to zoom in at least at 300%. That's what we're at right now, 300%. If it's something that I really care, like right now, this is a demo, so I'm going to go a lot faster, and I'm going to be sloppy because I want to make sure that you guys can get to work and actually do the image, right? I don't want you to watch me here forever. So I will go a lot faster, and I don't want to be zooming in more, because that way I can work faster. So if it was something that if it's me and like I'm working and I put some music and I just start relaxing and going to my flow here, I would probably be like zooming in at least like that or more, depending on how I'm working. So right now I'm at 600%, but because of the demo, I'm going to be working a little bit more from far away so I can go quicker. I might zoom in some areas just to show you the details of stuff, but I just want to point out that I probably wouldn't be this far away. I probably would be a little bit more closer. So having said that, let's talk about some of the tools. I'm going to give you a quick overview of all of them first so you know where they're at. And then when I refer to them, you know where they're at in the toolbar. So we have a couple tools right here. We have the spot healing brush first, and that's the one that looks like a band-aid, and it has a little circle with dots on the middle part, kind of like sneaking out through the back of the band-aid. So that's the spot healing brush. Right underneath, you have the healing brush, so that's the normal one. Both of these, the shortcut is J. Actually, even the patch tool is J too, which is the third one underneath. So they're kind of associated. Depending on how you have the toolbar, sometimes, it will have it underneath. That's how it used to be in Photoshop. The three of them were like underneath of one tool, like this one, if you hold it down, and it has a couple ones. So if you have an older version, you probably have the healing brush and you have the patch tool right inside of it. The spot healing brush came out later. I can't remember exactly what Photoshop it came out. But if you have the newest version, you'll see them right here. Okay. So having said that, what I'm going to cover is, first I'm going to start with the spot healing brush because it's the easiest one. But as we go down and we cover these three, the other one that I'm going to use a lot is the clone stamp. And that's this one right here. It looks like a little stamp icon. Okay. And the shortcut for that one is S. All right. So now you know where they're at and how they look. So the spot healing brush, remember, it has a little circle right there. The healing brush does not have a circle. The patch tool looks like a little patch. And then the clone stamp looks like a stamp. Okay. So I'm not going to go over there anymore, but I just wanted to point it out so that way you can see the difference, okay, between them. So let's start working here and showing how these tools work. I'm going to go to this area a little bit more above before I dive in, because here there's a lot, bigger area, so we can do more mistakes. The first one I'm going to do, I'm going to press J on my keyboard for the spot healing brush. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And one of the things that happens a lot of people that do Photoshop, you'll notice that there are a lot of tools that look exactly like the brush. So right now, if you just walk in here and you look at my tool that I have here, you will look at it and be like, it looks like a brush, but it's not a brush. It's this spot healing brush. And the same thing would be if you go to the healing brush. It just looks like a brush. You can't tell the difference between them. So you have to be paying attention to the toolbar to know what tool you have. A lot of students sometimes they ask me, like, oh, this tool is not working or the brush is not working. And it's because they have one of these instead of the brush tool, right? If I select the brush tool, you'll see that it looks exactly the same. Like if I put it in the size like this and I go back to this one, you can't tell the difference, right? So you have to be paying attention to what tool you have selected, okay? That's very important. And the clone stamp is the same type of tool. Look at that. That's the clone stamp. So again, just look for what's highlighted, what you have pressed on your tool right here. So I'm going to start with the spot healing brush, and this one works really easy. It's a great tool for little dots like this, any kind of small imperfection that you want to clear. You always want to have the size of the brush a little bit tied to what you want to do. So for example, if I'm going to do that one, that's like the biggest I would have it. You don't want to be like clearing that with this big circle. Okay, so you want to get close to the area because how this tool works, I'm just going to click here. What it does, basically, it grabs the surrounding area and throws it in and does some mathematical algorithm where it blends the two together. Okay, so if you have something big, sometimes it does like weird stuff. So you want to make sure that you have a good size that, it doesn't bring stuff from around or start doing a weird pattern that is noticeable. I try to do all these retouching the smallest possible, so that way they're less noticeable. Okay. But this tool works great for just going around and clicking on little, dots. If you have like dust on your sensor and the camera and you want to get rid of a little dust, that works great. For retouching old photographs, it's great for little small scratches and things like that. And you can see that it doesn't leave a trace behind. But sometimes if you're clicking in an area, let's say I want to get rid of this and I click there, you see it did something kind of weird. I'm going to zoom in so you can see how it looks. Right, so I'm clicking here. It doesn't quite clear. It does like something kind of weird sometimes, and it leaves, you see, left that. So it doesn't work great if it has like texture or something around it. It's better if the surrounding area is clean. Sometimes, you know, you get surprised and you click on something, it's like, oh, it worked, you know. But it's not guaranteed. And that's when I would use the other tool that I'm going to go in a little bit. But you can see that this one is easy to just click around and get rid of any kind of dots that you see. Okay, so that's the spot healing brush. Then we have the healing brush, and that one looks very similar. Now, the previous one, the spot one, you don't have to set a target. On this one, you do. Okay, what that means is, let's say if I go and I want to get rid of this, I'm going to make it bigger, even though I wouldn't do that. You have to set a target. Okay, so if you want to get rid of that, to set the target, and this is an important part that you have to understand, you have to hold Option, and you will see that the target appears. Now, I'm not clicking with my mouse. I'm just holding Option down. If I let it go, it goes back to the healing brush. Okay, so I'm holding down and it goes to a target. If I let go, it goes to that. So what you do is you hold Option and then you click. Okay, once. So you're ready with that, has set up your target area. So that's your target. And now you see when I go here, I'm not clicking, I'm just dragging with the mouse. And then you see that it appears that covers that. It's kind of bringing a copy of that area. And then you click. And what it does is the same as the other one. Look at that. It took it out. Okay, it combines the two areas and clears the previous one. The reason why I like this one most than the spot healing brush in most of the cases is because I get to define where I want to bring it from. So if I see that this area is clean, I can click here and then go here. You know, for what we were doing a little bit ago, just going around here and clicking on little dots, the spot healing brush works great. Now, when you're working in an area, let's say like right in here, right, that you have a line and you have definition, there you have to be a lot more careful, okay? Because then in that area, you don't want to use the spot healing brush because you want to keep that line. You want to follow the you know, the visual cues that's giving you that image. You don't want to distort that with something weird. If I go and select, let's see, this is going to be one of the times that it's going to make me look bad. I'm going to change to the spot healing brush. I'm going to make it like that. And then, whoop, let's zoom me out. If I click here, you see like it doesn't quite work. Like sometimes it works, like that kind of work, but you can see that there is a difference of tones here. If you use the other one, if you use the healing brush, you can set up your target, let's say here, you see, and it has that line, and you can put it right here in that preview and then click. So you're guaranteeing that's following the line and it's not doing anything weird on you. Now, in this case, I wouldn't actually use this one. The reason is, if you notice this area here, it created like a ghost kind of like yellow tone. Because remember, it's not really copying and pasting. It's blending the two. So it's leaving some of that trace of that color of the sepia here that was there on the background. So in that case, I would probably use the different one, and it is this one right here, the clone stamp, because this one is more like cloning, right? So you're literally copying and throwing it over there. So what I would do is I would click here and I will go right here and put it, you know, right over it so you can see it, and then click, okay? And that way it gets rid of that yellow tone, right? And then I can go here and do like that. One thing I want to point out, you see that plus sign? I'm not letting go of the mouse. That plus sign is the target area, and the same thing happens with the healing brush. It follows you, okay? So right now I'm doing this, right? So if I keep going like this, you see that now I painted over here? Because it's memory has the computer that the other stain that was there was still there, okay? So it's actually throwing it again to the right side of it, you see? So that you have to be careful with. So one of the things that I do when I do this is I constantly am clicking the target and then doing it, okay? And then clicking the target and then doing it, because you want to reset your target often to make sure that you're doing a good cleaning job, okay? So this area right here, I probably would do the same. One of the key things of using this tool is knowing where to click on your target. So if I click there, I did that because there's kind of like a fainted line there. I want to follow it so I can meet this other one. Then here, I will click here. I'll make it smaller because I want to make sure I don't bring that helmet. And then click here, and you see that plus sign following, and I can kind of like do this right here, and then I'll reset it from here. And one of the things that you want to do is when you throw it from one area, I'm setting my target, clicking here and then going here, you want to constantly be moving that target, because if you keep doing it from the same area, you start repeating the same thing over and over, and then you leave a trace that you can tell that you were copying and pasting, right? So you want to kind of fool the eye. So here I can see that there's these lines, right? So I want to follow that. So I click here, that's my target, and I bring it over here and I follow that. You can see that plus sign following me all the way there. Okay. So that's what you want to do. You want to kind of mimic what's happening there. And then same for the helmet right here. I click here and then I try to follow that line so I can bring that helmet down right here. All right. And I can do it from the below also. This one has a black line there, so I have to be careful that that doesn't look bad. So let's try to bring this one here to get rid of that. And then this, we kind of like throw it in here. And that one, I want to get rid of that black line. There we go. That's looking a little bit better. Obviously, I'm not going to be super careful with this because I want to go quicker. Because we have a lot to cover with this image. This is actually a lab that takes a long time. Takes a long time because you want to be careful, right? You want to do a good job. And one of the things that I've learned from doing a lot of Photoshop, and when you have friends and family that know that you can do things, they're going to approach you and be like, hey, can you fix this image for me? And you're like, yeah, that's not like a quick fix, right? It takes time. So I just want to zoom out so you can see just this little area that we have fixed by taking off the visibility, right? So look at that. That's a big line right there, and we just basically disappeared it, right? Really easily. And that's what we're going to do with the rest of the image. Now, let me show you one more tool that we can use to fix things like that are a little bit bigger, like this one, for example. So we already talked about the spot healing brush, and that one is really good for little dots or little stains. You can actually move it around. Then the healing brush, then you set your target with option clicking, and then you can drag it to another area. Now this one right here, the patch tool, it works very similar than the healing brush and the spot healing brush, but instead of just being a circle, you can actually define the area by drawing it, kind of like the lasso tool. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go around this shape right here. And it's going to look like I have a selection, right? Because I have the walking ants. Now, what you do is after you select what you want to clear, you're going to drag it out to an area that's clean, like this one, and then let go. So basically what it did is replace what was here with this area that I threw it into and it merged the two. You can tell if you see these three dots, I don't know if in your screen you'll be able to see them, they come from right here. Okay, so you have to be careful that when you throw it to an area, it's not, with anything weird, because you will actually blend the two. Like if I go here and throw the line, you see it leaves that weird line. And this is a good example that it's not really copying it literally, like it's creating like a faint image of what that was by mixing the two, and it is something weird. So you have to be careful what you're throwing it at. That's why when I'm working with my workflow, the first thing I do is I grab the spot healing brush or the healing brush, and I go around the image first one round, and I take every little dot that I feel like it shouldn't be there. So I basically select the spot healing brush like this, right? And I clear all these little dots. I go around and I just clear that. And that's like, this is the moment that you put some good music, and just like start clicking, if you're in a classroom, you can hear like music already, and it's like jazz with all the people clicking on their mouse. So this takes time. So that's the first thing I do when I start retouching my image. I just select the spot healing brush or the healing brush, and I start getting rid of all the little dots first. That's the first part. And I do one big round. And then after that, I start taking the stuff that are bigger like this, right? In this case, you can do it with like, let's say I would do it here either with the clone step or the healing brush. The reason is because there's that line. So I want to click the target, hit on the line, and then follow that line right there, and then click, right? So that's what you want to do. Now you have to be careful, right? If I go here and click, I bring that line down there. I don't want that. So then you have to redo your target and then click there, right? So that's how you work around. And the same for any kind of stain that you see, you want to clear that out, right? I'm not going to be super, careful with this because I want to make sure that you just learn how to use the tools. You guys are gonna, I already like retouched this image once. I don't want to do it again. But one thing I want to point out, when you're retouching an old photograph, you want to leave the original image there. You don't want to get rid of stuff that is supposed to be there, right? Because then it starts looking too fake. One of the things that, if you see this image right here, on this little area right here, there's like this dent, and that's actually on the plane, and you can tell because of the light that's there. So I actually would leave these like dents here, but I will clear the little white dots. If I'm suspicious if it's there or not, usually I'll take it out. But if there's one like little instinct of me that says like, oh, I think that was there, I'll just leave it, because you want to leave that, aura of being old also in the image. But all these white dots, I'll clear them. Because it's not supposed to be there. Like, for example, this line right here, that's actually from the plane, so I don't want to get rid of that. But all these little dots, I would just go around and click on them. Remember that the size is really important. You don't want to do it too big, because then you start leaving a trace behind. So, any white dots like that, you want to clear it out. You want to be, careful with where you click. And if you see something, just undo it and then try a different tool. Try the clone stamp, try, the patch tool. This is a great example for where you can use the patch tool. All right, if I start clicking here, you see like it doesn't quite get rid of it. It's just like a big mess. So this would not work for the shape that it is and all that. So in this case, I'm actually going to change to a patch tool, this one right here. So what you do is you go around, and if you notice, I'm not going really like close or really far. I'm leaving like a gap, okay? If you go too close, like right on the line, it will not work. And if you go too far, it will not work. You want to be leaving a little gap. And in this case, I can see some shadow from the reflection on the plane there. So I want to bring it up so I can bring that reflection down, okay, to blend it. Now, when I did that, it did something weird there and here. That's fine. You can just redo that area then, and then do that and bring it to the clean area and then get rid of it. Same here. If it did something weird there, and then you bring it to a clean area. That's why it's really important that you first do a one pass through with the spot healing brush and get rid of all these dots, because if you have a bunch of scratches and stuff, you don't have a clean area because everything is full of dirt, right? So you can't do this kind of work if you have a bunch of stuff. But if you have clean areas, then you can like do big things like this really easily and just drag it to a clean area, right? And then you get rid of all that stuff. So that's how you work with the patch tool. It's really easy to use, but you have to be careful that you don't, get too excited with it. Sometimes it leaves a weird trace. This right here is a bolt from the plane, so don't take that out. But let's go to a harder area. You guys can clean all that. I'm not going to clean all that. But this is an area that I feel like in this image is probably one of the hardest, because it has this stain that is a different color, and it's like in an area that has like a defined line. It's like sharp there. So let me tell you how I would do this. There's different ways, but what I would do here, I probably would go with the clone stamp, because if it has definition and if it has a tone that I want to like take away, I think in this case it will work better with the clone stamp. So I'm going to zoom in just so you can see how I would do this little part. I will make my clone stamp smaller, something like that. And I go click here and I start getting rid of that, right? And that stain. So I'm setting up my target and then going. Now you have to be careful here because I see some shadow here. So I don't want to bring it from here to here, because then you'll see that blue, right? And now it's in that gray area. So you want to bring it from the gray area here and then do that. Okay, so it's really important. It's all about what you're looking at, and try to follow what you think should be happening. So for example, here, I will follow that line, click here, somewhere here, and then make sure that you're following the line so you can get rid of it, right? And then do that part. Now, one of the things that happens when you use this tool, if I zoom in, well, now you can see the pixels, but there is some repetition that's happening. If you see that, then you have to select your clone stamp, maybe make it smaller, and then grab it from here and try to get rid of it, because you don't want to let the viewer know that you kind of retouch this. There's actually a software, I went to a seminar once that the FBI was showing a software that will read your image and actually can identify exactly where you retouch it. And one of the reasons is because of that repetition. And the software can see the pattern of the image and know where the pixels have been altered. So if you were thinking of taking these skills to create documents or anything like that, be careful. There are softwares out there that will identify where you have retouched your image, and all it has to do with the algorithm, right? So we can fool the eye, right? We can kind of make that illusion that, you know, is basically getting fixed. But if you really look at the nature or the structure of this image, you can kind of tell that it has been altered, right? Because how are we doing? Like right now, if I bring here to this, right, I'm basically bringing the same information. So what I want to do is I wanted to go a little bit quicker. So I'm going to go here and clear all this area. Let's see if I can go faster so that way you guys are not bored here looking at me. Now remember, you see that plus? I'm letting it go and then clicking again, because if I don't let go, let me go back so you can see what happens. If I start doing this and don't let go, you see right now it's not doing anything because it's bringing the same thing that was there to the bottom part. Okay, so you have to let go and then restart or reset your target. Okay. So you'll get a hang of this. This is one of those things that you have to do it to kind of get used to it. It's kind of like that pen tool that we did. It's the more you do it, the more you get the hang of it. It's not a tool that, you know, you get it right away. And there are some really good things about this tool that I will point out later when we start retouching people and faces and things like that. When you have the clone stamp, one of the cool features that it has is that you can decide how much opacity you want to use it. We have been using it at 100%, okay, and flow at 100%, but you can decide that you don't want to throw the entire, you know, copy and paste. You want like 50%, so then you can start blending them. So that's a really cool thing that you can do with the clone stamp. And there's a couple other fun stuff I'll show you later. But for now, I just want to finish this part so you can see the before and after. It's pretty cool when you spend the time satisfying, and then at the end that you can see the before and after. You know, when you're doing it, it's like painful. It's like, oh, I'm tired of clicking and this and that. But then when you show it to people and you go like, oh, look, this is how it was, and look at it now, it's like, oh, you know, you can really tell the difference, right? So it pays off at the end. Same for retouching people, right? So when you retouch an image or you create a design and that took you hours, and then you go like, man, this is cool. It looks pretty nice. Okay, so I'm going to make this bigger because now what I want to do is here, I want to follow that line. Now, this is going to be tricky. It's not going to be perfect, right? But we want to try to fool the eye. So if you see, this line has an angle already, and it's actually going down. So it's the opposite. So what I'm going to do is every time I click, I go a little bit down, right? To kind of fool the eye that it's actually a curve, but it's not, okay? Okay, so that looks okay. Same here. Now you can see that repetition, so we have to go in there and kind of fix that. And now what I would do on this side is you have to meet in the middle. If you go from one side only, it would not work. You have to go here on this side and then try to meet on the middle somehow. It's kind of tricky, but you can make it work if you're careful. I'm not being too careful right now, but I'm actually going to just clear that over there. I'm going to do this. Let's kind of ruined that over there. Oop, let's undo that. Okay. See, we're getting there. It's not perfect, right? Because you can see all that detail there. I can do a better job if I was a little bit more careful, but I'm going to try to make it work, even though it looks horrible. When we zoom out, it should look a little bit better. So let's see how that looks in a little bit. Okay, and then here. That one looks a little bit weird, so I'm going to clear this little area here that looks a little bit funky. And that black right here. Bring some of that gray. Oop, I have 3 dots right there. I don't want that, so I need to get rid of those somehow. Now this area here looks pretty bad. I probably would, you know, with my OCD, I probably would go in and be like, no, this, I have to restart it. But since this is a lab, I have to make sure that I finish it. Okay, so this area here, I don't like these dots because you can tell it's a repetition. So I'll probably go from here and bring some of this tone over here to try to get rid of that somehow. And one way of getting rid of that is you go into in between. So right here, I can see some lines. So I click in between and then clear that. So that way you don't see it. Clean the lines. And then same for here. I have to make sure I match the same tonality. And I go here, I'm going to go from above and try to clean the line so it looks a little bit smoother. It's starting to look kind of okay. You know, I'm not going to clean it all, but you get the idea. You have to spend some time fixing it. And let's see from far away now how it looks. All right, so if I'm from up all the way here, right, it looks pretty good. You know, I think it could be better. I feel like I see some wavy parts right there that I would probably clear if it was an image that I want to finish correctly. But from that to this, not bad. You know, you can see that the line went up a little bit, but I did that on purpose because I wanted to keep that like same shape. So it didn't look weird, but it worked out. I would probably extend this black line also through here and maybe go down a little bit to fix that issue. And that would be really easy to do. If you just go here and click here and then start going down, then you can kind of mimic how it was before, right? So, and then you have to clear all this like wavy things that created from that copy and pasting. But that looks pretty good, you know. So that's a good example of how you have to clean that image, right? So you have to take your time. I didn't, you know, fix it entirely because you guys are going to do that, but at least I cleared the big ones so you can kind of learn how to use the tools. Again, remember we have the spot healing brush for the little dots. That works great. And you can get creative with them. There's actually a lot of things that you can do with all of them. You can basically do the entire retouching with one of them if you want. But I think it's important that you try all of them because there's going to be scenarios that one of them doesn't work and you have to switch to the other one to do that job. And that's what I mean, that you have to be flexible and you have to learn every tool because there are going to be moments that the tool that you're used to, maybe it doesn't work well. But I kind of work a little bit around the image. I didn't clear everything. Now that you imagine that this is perfect, the next step that you have to do is make a selection of the sky. Okay, so imagine that you finish retouching and you're happy. Of course, you have to also go in here and make sure that there's nothing on the face. You know, if you have to clear, let's say like that area right there, and you want to click that and clear that. If you see anything else on the face, you know, you have to make sure you clean it. Or the head, or like, let's say that dot. Oh, I had the wrong one. You see, that happened to me. You have to look at the tools all the time. So, for example, here I see this white area I don't like. So I would go here, kind of clear that, kind of clean that area. So you definitely have to, you know, be a little bit careful with this image and kind of fine tune. So this is a project that you have to definitely put some good music and just relax into it. You can't do it quickly. If you rush it, I'll be able to tell. So imagine that I finish retouching this image. So I'm going to go to the next step. The next step is basically select the sky so I can put the other images behind it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the path panel right here. So if you see it on my right side, I'm going to highlight it so you can see it. And I go right here to the menu and I'm going to click new path and I'm going to put sky here. Okay, whoop. And now I'm going to select my pen tool. Okay, so remember the pen tool, the shortcut is P, looks like a fountain pen. And so as soon as I grab that tool, I'm going to basically make my selection. So I'm going to click actually from outside the image because I have to go around. I'm going to go quicker. I'm not going to be, you know, too careful. Remember that you always want to be a little bit in of the image. Okay, so that way we don't end up with a white halo around it. And you kind of like select the helmet. Whoop, did that one wrong. And you start going around. Okay, I probably want to add another dot here. Command and to move that dot. And then you click here. Now I'm going to go around. Okay. And close my path. Remember, you have to wait until you see that little circle. and then you can close it, and you will see on your path panel that you have this white area that's your selection. Okay, so now that I have that, I'm going to make it a selection. So I'm going to go to the little menu on the top right. I click on it. I go make selection. You want some feather on it. So I'm going to put, let's put for 0.8, see what happens. Okay. So I did 0.8 for that one. I'm going to go to the layer here that I had, and I'm going to add a mask. Okay. Now, don't panic. One of the things that's going to happen is you're going to see that all the stuff came about. And the thing is that right now I have the opposite of the mask. Two ways of inverting it. One way would be if you do, while you have the mask selected, not this one, the mask, you do Command I, it will invert the mask. Okay. Another way is if you have your properties panel open, okay, you can click where it says invert, and it will invert your mask. Okay. So this one, a lot of people like it because you don't have to remember the shortcut. You just have to remember to have the properties panel open. Okay. So I opened it beforehand so that way you can see it right here. Okay. But sometimes you have it hidden right on this little icon right here. So if you don't have it open, you can just click on it while you have the mask selected and we'll invert it. Okay. So when you add the mask to that layer, it will look like this. So don't panic. Just go to this properties panel and click invert, and then you'll see your image. Okay. And then if you also panic because you see this, it's because you're seeing the one underneath. All right. So that's why you get to see all the stuff that you got rid of, and suddenly you're going to see it, and it's because you're seeing the image underneath. Okay. So now that we have that, we're going to bring the car. Now, I did it beforehand to save some time on the video, but you have to basically make a selection of your car. And this one, I'm going to leave it up to you, to whatever tool you want to use. You can use the pen tool, you can use the quick select tool, whatever tool you want to use to practice. You want to make sure that you add some feather, and that is some softness to the edge. Remember about that. If you just cut it, it will look weird because it's just a cutout. So you want to add some feather. I think I added like 0.5 or something like that to this one. But I have the car right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag it all the way here. Okay. I'm going to put it on this image. And remember, you want to drag it underneath. So that way it's behind it. So if you don't see, I'm going to put it right here. So underneath the guy because they're behind it, right? I'm going to bring the city also. So I'm going to drag it up and drag it in here. Remember, if you have trouble dragging it because you don't have space in your mouse or something like that, you can press Command A, okay, Command C for copying it, and then you go here, Command V for Victor, and then you can just paste it that way too. Okay, so now that we have a lot of stuff here, it can be a little bit confusing. I'm going to hide the paper for now. I'm going to hide the car. I actually want the order that you should have this is. You should have the background. You should have then the layer of the city, and you should write what it is so that way you know. Then you have the car. Okay, car, and then you have the paper. But in reality, the paper can be above everything. So now let's start with the city. Okay, so one of the things is that city is too sharp, right? It's sharper than the image of the gentleman here. You want to somehow kind of like diffuse it, right? So it's kind of blurry. So it looks like the focus is here, not in the background. So to do that, you're going to go to Filter, Blur, and then Gaussian Blur. Once you do that, you can drag your slider right here until you find a spot that looks, I want it blurry because I want to make sure it looks like he's focused, not the background. So let's do that just to start. The same thing I'm going to do with the car. Okay, I'm going to blur it a little bit. So I'm going to select the car. I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and I'm going to blur it. Okay. Now the car I'm going to blur a little bit less because it should be a little bit sharper, right? Because it's a little bit closer to the plain picture, but I want it a little bit more blurry than him. So you have to kind of look at both and try to figure out where is the sweet spot. So once you have that spot, you press OK. And then I'm going to actually duplicate the car, and I'm going to explain why in a little bit. I'm going to go drag it down to duplicate it. So I have the car copy and then the car. So the one underneath, I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, and I'm going to select Motion Blur. The reason is to make that effect that the car is like flying, right, moving. That actually looks not bad. I can see the blur right here, so I'm going to leave it right there. I like it. I'm not going to play with it too much. I'm going to press OK. Now, once you do that, you want to move it, a little bit back, so that way it looks that it's only in the back and not on the foreground of the car. So you move it back so that way it looks like it's flying. And then the last step is the paper. Now the paper, you was wondering, why is that? Well, one of the reasons is because this image right here, it has so much texture, and right, it's an old photograph. These are new. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put into practice the blending mode. So I'm going to put that paper and I'm going to go through them to see if there's one that looks a little bit good. Actually, this one looks pretty good. Soft light looks good. And that's a little bit of that texture that the plane has with that old paper image. And now that I do that, the last thing is to make it black and white. So I'm going to click on the top layer. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and add a black and white adjustment above everything. Okay. And that's going to maybe wrap it. Now, if it doesn't look good enough, and probably it doesn't, I want you to add a new layer with some noise on it. Okay. So a way to do that, if you hold Option and you click on the plus right here, this menu comes up. And you're going to go here where it says Mode. You're going to go to Overlay. Okay. So when this window comes, change the mode to Overlay. And then click on this check mark that says Fill with Overlay Neutral Color 50% Gray. What that's going to do is it's going to add a blank layer with gray that we're going to add the noise to. So I'm going to go to Filter. Then I'm going to go to Noise and add noise. Okay. So once you do that and you click there, you're going to add noise to the overall image. Actually, that doesn't look that bad. Again, I'm exaggerating the noise because I want to blend the two images together. Okay. And I'm going to press right there. Now that looks pretty good. That looks fun. You can get creative with this technique to blend different images. I want to show you the before and after so you can get an idea. So I'm going to go right here. So that's where we were at the beginning, and then that's where we are now. No, pretty good. Pretty good. Okay, so this image will take you a while. It's not something that you can do very quickly. I went really quick because I'm just trying to give you the tools so you can do it. I recommend that you pause the video, you look at it, practice the tools maybe in an area, and then practice another tool. Don't try to rush it through. The whole point of this is that you get comfortable with all of these tools. Remember, we have the spot healing brush, the healing brush, we have the patch tool, and we have the clone stamp. And all those tools work differently, and you can take advantage of them in different scenarios and different techniques. So make sure that you use them all for this image. Don't just rely on one of them, because at some point you're going to need one of them. Okay, so if you have questions, let me know. I hope that this is a lab that will really force you to focus on the computer and do a lot of exercise in your finger, because you're going to be clicking a lot. But that's the whole point. You have to practice a lot to get used to know the tools and to get better on the techniques. And you might even learn a couple of things on your own while you're doing it, because you start noticing what works and what doesn't, right? There's a lot of things that I know from doing it that I know what to expect already, because I know how the tools behave or how the images will behave with that specific tool. And I cannot teach it, right? You have to actually do it. So I'm hoping that this lab will take you a while so you can really practice. Okay. So once you get it like this, you'll probably feel really satisfied at the end. So I hope that you enjoy it. And if you have any questions, just let me know. Have a great day.